meeting to order. Call roll.
Chairperson William McCurdy. Vice Chairperson Steigerwood. Commissioner Marissa Brown.
Present.
Commissioner Nancy Bruni. Commissioner Richard Churchfield. Commissioner Carrie Cox.
Present.
Commissioner Valerie Craig.
Present.
Commissioner Michael Dixon.
Present.
LaTonna Turner. We are in compliance with the Nevada Open Meeting.
Thank you so much. We'll now move to public comment. This is the first time set aside for public comment. This public commenting period will be limited to items that are before us on the agenda. If you wish to speak to items that are not on the agenda, you will be offered the opportunity to do so at the second public commenting period at the end of the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to come forward at this time for items that are on the agenda? Hello and welcome.
Hello. Okay. Hi, I'm Madeline Rose, Marble Manor, Resident Council President. I come to you today for numerous reasons and to address, I want to make sure that it's on an agenda item. If we are talking about agenda item, would that be in particular section 2 right now in the business item number 2? Going forward, are we getting ready to get into that, correct?
We are in public comment for
Okay.
items that are, if you have items that you want to address that are on this agenda.
Okay,
this is that
yes.
commenting time.
So in section 2, I do have something that I would like to address. Go up here. Sorry, I'm pulling my...
Section 2, which item?
Section 2, item 5.
You have a question on the report?
Yeah, I have a question about it going forward in this conversation right now. I am I first and foremost want to ask the commissioners board, do you know what the RAB board is?
During public comment, this is
I understand.
this is time set aside for you to voice whatever it is that you have that you want to speak to, but there will not be a back and forth dialogue.
That's fine. And the reason why I'm giving you that rhetorical question is because there's stipulations and regulations that make sure that the RAB board is properly informed of regulations and changes that are going forward. So I want to read this to you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I have concerns regarding the exclusion and improper handling of resident advisory board members and the residents. I come to you today as I'm concerned about the resident and the member of the resident advisory board. Today I stand...
Madam Rose,
this
is not addressing any item on the agenda.
This actually is, because this report can't go forward if the RAB board is not actually in compliance. And we have not had a RAB board in compliance since 2017.
I'll just have legal counsel speak on that.
Okay. Since 2017, the RAB board this is the last time that they signed the bylaws. I've been the president of Marble Manor and been part of the RAB board since 2019. And at no point in time have we reviewed, gone over, or signed any bylaws and or no memorandum of understandings. But also during our meetings, we have been told, and residents have been told, that it's only in the inclusion of vice presidents and presidents, which is a violation of of the regulations. So therefore, if any public and any the fiscal year goes forward, if the fiscal year goes forward and you have not had the conversation from the resident advisory board.
Okay. So you're commenting on item 5, which is informational purposes only. So are you... Report of the executive director is for informational purposes only, and it's properly agendized.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward at this time? All right, hands here, no one else. We'll move to the approval of the minutes of the May 18th, 2023 meeting? We have a motion by Commissioner Segerblum. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Curcio. Is there any comment on that motion? Hearing seeing none, all in favor? Any abstentions? Any opposition? Motion is adopted. We'll now move on to item number 4, the approval of the agenda with the inclusion of any emergency items and the deletion of any items. There will be one change to the agenda. We will be moving item 10 we will be switching item 10 and item 12. We will have to approve the public housing trespass policy before we can approve the resolution. All right, we have a motion for approval with the amended agenda. We have a second by Commissioner Churchio. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion is approved. We'll now move on to section number 2, item number 5.
Good afternoon, all. Wanted to just give a few highlights of activities since we last met. We had our Family Day, and I wanted to thank the commissioners who were able to come by and support that effort. Family Day is an opportunity for us to get together with all of our families to have a little fun check-in, but more importantly, make them aware of resources that may be available. And we had had quite a showing this year. I want to give a special thanks to the vendors that showed up. Everyone from education, healthcare, jobs, a lot of vendors came out to support our residents and households in their efforts moving towards self-sufficiency. We also had our first-time homeowner expo last weekend. Commissioner Segerblum partnered with him on that and had quite the showing, very good outcome. We did employee training. I talked about that in our leading up to our last meeting. We had 2 half days of implicit bias training. And I think judging from the feedback of the staff, very, very good good feedback on just ways in which we can improve our customer service and work more collaboratively with our partners. Wanted to thank Commissioner Craig and her role in the we did a Jamestown Tower RAD kickoff. We're in the process of doing some remodeling over Jamestown, and Mr. Craig joined us and folks on the modernization side, and we talked to residents, thanking them in advance of the dust and the little inconvenience they're going to have, but just letting them know that we were committed to make sure that we were still delivering on our service, and we did a mock groundbreaking. So very, very good opportunity to interact with residents over there. I wanted to mention that we have a number of chairs today. We're hosting our landlord symposium. We're bringing our existing and new landlords to talk about ways in which we can increase the partnership and also offer incentives for landlords to participate in our program. As you know, we're approximately 90,000 affordable housing that we have here in the southern region, and that landlord collaboration partnership is very, very important. Wanted to, on a monthly basis, I'll give the support, and we started to put together a little handout to let you just give all of the commissioners, and we're going to send these out to the residents as well. Just give you a highlight. In addition to those things that I may mention, some of the bigger things that happened since we last left. We had we partnered with Nevada Youth Network and did a celebration of Mother's Day and Memorial Day. We had our regional housing forum that a lot of you were involved in, which really helped us strengthen our partnerships. And then we did our Life is Golden celebration of aging. And so we're going to present something similar to this on a monthly basis, just to remind all of the work that we're doing. And then lastly, I wanted to acknowledge some promotions and hirings and promotion. We after a long search, we have a new IT manager. Yohav Igoshi is our new IT manager. He starts in the beginning of next month, and he'll be available for our next board meeting. And then also wanted to announce that, again, after a substantial search, we have a new chief operating officer, and that's Lee Quick, promoted Lee to COO, and she'll be our new chief operating officer. And that concludes our report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any members have questions on the report or comments? Commissioner Bruni.
Thank you, Chair McCurdy. Thank you for the report, Mr. Jordan. I have a couple of questions. When you mentioned employee training, I've heard recently from some folks that there were some policies or some laws up at the legislature that deal with fair housing policies, and I guess HUD has issued some guidance. I know I've heard from some constituents that, depending on who they talk to at the Housing Authority, they get different information about their fair housing eligibility. So how are you training employees on fair housing policies? I guess is my first question.
So fair housing and we have employees monitor those items that come in. Whenever HUD has fair housing has, we get notified on those. Depending on where those things exist, I'd be curious maybe offline to find out exactly what you're speaking of to see if in fact there's a need for
It would be good to know that
Yes.
all of the employees know about those. And then to what extent, so great news on the landlord symposium, to what extent are you partnering with Clark County if Clark County has a landlord tenant program, or North Las Vegas or Henderson or the city of Las Vegas? Because I will share that when we toured San Antonio's Haven for Hope and talked to some of the stakeholders there, one of the things that struck me is that they are working as a community across all the jurisdictions on landlord engagement, and it feels, just my experience on the city council a few months, that we are sort of, every jurisdiction is doing it on their own, and so I would love to see greater collaboration, because as you have pointed out, that is going to be really important to move the needle for our housing insecure population.
Absolutely. And so to answer that, we feel this is a starting place. Today on the agenda, you have an opportunity to approve a incentive program. Currently, Clark County has a similar incentive program that we participate in as it relates to the homeless population. Our thought is that we kick this off, and we then work with the jurisdictions to see as we move forward, hoping to get them involved in it. So I'm pleased with the level of collaboration. This is something that we're doing new. We like to call it a demonstration program, and my experience tells me that the results will garner additional support from the other jurisdictions.
Hello? Can I get in, Commissioner Craig?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to welcome Lee to the team. I think she's a very exciting addition, and the city lost somebody great, but I think
Can you hear me?
Housing Authority got somebody great, so I look forward to working with you. Thank you so much.
There looks like there's a question from Valerie Craig. Commissioner Craig.
Yes, this is still about the Section 3 thing. I didn't get an answer.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? Can you guys hear me? Yes? No?
Commissioner Craig, this is Ted.
Can anybody hear?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Online? Commissioner Craig, there you go. We got you.
Yeah, hi. I'm concerned about.
Is there any way you can unmute on your side or?
Unmute on my
You
side.
are
Let me
unmuted.
see. Can you hear me now? I guess the phone does not want me to talk.
I can hear you, Commissioner Craig. I don't know if anyone else can hear you. This is Teddy Parker, but I can hear you.
Okay, Commissioner Craig, I can hear
I can
you.
hear you as well.
All right, good. My question is about the Section 3 thing, and I was reading some things where the project manager needed to notify different individuals about the education and the training and all of that. And I know that we're now, we're now under RAD. And I never saw any notification about, positions that were available, about the training that was available. And, I harp a lot about Section 3. I've never seen anything. And I'm just wondering, are the project managers being remiss or what?
Frank.
We're going to bring up Frank Stafford to respond to your questions.
Frank Stafford, Director of Development Modernization. Section 3, the Section 3 program is basically, it's two parts. It's a Section 3 business concern, and it's a Section 3 where the contractor has basically a mandate. If there's any new hires, he has to reach out to Section 3 employees first. The Housing Authority has a job bank, Section 3 employees, which consists of residents. But then Section 3 can also be any low-income resident of Southern Nevada. So if the contractor is hiring new individuals, then he will reach out to our Section 3 coordinator, and they will provide a list of qualified applicants. And those individuals are sent to the contractor. They will interview them at that time. The contractor can provide training for those individuals himself. There's not training currently set in place by the Housing Authority, but the contractor can do that. So that could be what Commissioner Craig is referring to.
Yeah, what I'm saying is they need to post the notices about the jobs and the positions for training and the anticipated date of employment. And I understand they may be giving it to you, but my thing about it is, but it has not been available for anywhere. Particularly, I know that they're doing some things in RAD, RAD where I'm staying, and there's been no notices, and that's been my constant complaint. They may be giving it to whatever office, but I talked about Section 3 quite a bit, and no one has ever provided me any verification about what job descriptions are, the training they're providing, particularly now that I'm in RAD. And there's been nothing, and that's been my song and dance for about at least a year and a half.
And as I stated, Section 3 is the contract to the greatest extent feasible will reach out to residents. But if there's no new hires at that particular time, then the contract is not required to bring individuals on. We request and receive a copy of all of the contractor as well as the subcontractors' employees, which we monitor in our certified payroll. If the Housing Authority notices that there are new hires from any of those contractors and they have not notified our Section 3 coordinator, then that item will be, the contractor will be sent some type of information letter, and that doesn't bode well for them for future jobs. But we do monitor that through our certified payroll, the Delmar specialists, when they receive those lists up front. And supportive services, who has the Section 3 job bank, as well as procurement, who's the Section 3 coordinator. That information is provided to the contractor during the pre-bid, and we also reiterate that with pre-construction.
So in other words, as long as you all have been doing Section 3, no resident has been because you have a designated organization that's doing it. People that are the lower tier, like we the residents, like even me, the commissioner's been complaining about the same thing for the longest. I'll never been notified that there'll never be any position, so it's just more symbolical than real. That's my question. I'm just confused about that. But you're telling me what you're telling me, but yet I'm just seeing there's been no training. There's been there's been nothing. And we keep hearing this song and a dance, and we got people that are going to be coming up to get their contract renewed. Just like, for an example, I know somebody could have been the janitor. You are recently, I know for sure that we renewed payment for some janitors. You mean that none of our people in our staff would have been qualified to work as janitors? I'm just confused. Just forgive me. I'm just confused.
As indicated, if the contractor has a request for new hires, then they reach out to the Housing Authority for individuals that are a part of the Section 3 job bank. And that job bank is currently being updated. It's on our website now, where residents can go in and complete that information to apply for Section 3.
Have a good day. Thank you, Mr. Stafford.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes. Let me retract something. I just would like for us to get a better understanding, Director. I believe you have some training coming up, and I think that would be quite beneficial for all the commissioners to understand maybe the list and how you guys go about that. So I would be more interested, and maybe we can get a look at a snapshot of how that goes. Probably really help us all better understand how you guys do this process. Thank you.
Commissioner Bruni.
Thank you. I have a follow-on question. Are we actually reporting quarterly or annually how many individuals have been employed through the Section 3?
I know that the reports are submitted. Our procurement department is the one that submits those reports. I don't know if they're annually or quarterly, but they do submit Section 3 reports.
And
as I indicated,
I think the bigger question is that are we in compliance? Compliance with our report.
Well, I also just want to know about outcomes. So, yes, are we in compliance? But then also, it's one thing to be in compliance, but then if the numbers are really low, so we're not actually, bringing people through. So I'd love to know if we get copies of those reports, please.
If we as board members, we can make that available.
Johnny Shaw, Procurement Manager. So the new rule for Section 3 was implemented by HUD July of 2021, but to this date, we have not been required to support any reports to HUD. They're still working through a lot of changes and revisions to the policy, and so we have not been notified yet of any reporting from to HUD.
Johnny, can you speak to how we track with vendors and, to make sure that if vendors are hiring new people, how do we present tenants or residents to them?
Yeah, basically, I send out reminders to all the contractors that are on contract with the agency on a quarterly basis to see what type of Section 3 that they have on their payrolls. And they've again, and I was going to mention this in the agenda item, but there's two parts of Section 3. There's a regular Section 3 worker, which is a low to very low income individual according to HUD income standards, and then there's a targeted Section 3 worker, which is a public housing resident, a Section 8 recipient, or youth bill participant. And so those are the targeted categories for Section 3. And so it's not always I think the misnomer is it's not always a resident that's hired through Section 3, but it's a low to very low income individual based on HUD regulations.
Thank you. So I guess moving forward, just make sure that some of the comments that were brought forward, we can make sure that we look at those. If that concludes your report, we'll move forward to Section 3, approval of consent agenda items number 6 and 7. I entertain a motion. We have a motion for approval by Commissioner Segerblum. Vice Chair Segerblum, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bruni. Is there any discussion? Hearing, seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Position? Motion is adopted. This concludes the end of the consent agenda item. We'll now move on to Section 4, Commissioner, Executive Director recognitions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, sir. Since our last gathering, the following residents have departed: Joyce O'Brien, Ronald Izu, Lucinda Germanier, Shirley Cooper, Marcia Counter, Alonzo Valencia, Marcela Bravo, Stephen Vibert, and Thomas DeSeaman. Let's have a moment of silence for the departed, please. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item number 9, approval of the annual independent audit report for the period ending September 30th, 2022.
Fred Herron will present this item.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Fred Herron, Chief Administrative Officer. Each year, we're required to have our agency audited by a independent third-party auditor. Today, we have Mr. Dale Rector, Director Lofton and Reader, here to present the audit report.
Thank you very much, Fred. I appreciate that 3-minute clock. It doesn't work, so I don't know if my presentation is longer than 3 minutes, but here we go. Fred, thank you so much for everything you've done. Mr. Jordan, your staff has been very cooperative and very good, and we appreciate everyone that was here, over 200-something employees, and needing more, and all assisted with this process, and we are very grateful. I was told I didn't have enough time to read the entire audit report, that I only need to present like 5 or 10 minutes worth, and that's what I'm going to do. And it was a good audit. And I'm a CPA. I've been practicing doing HUD audits for 44 years. And our firm specializes in totally doing audits for housing authorities, as well as we have tax practice. But the audit side is totally devoted to housing, low-income housing tax credits, multifamily housing, and so forth. So we do go considerably around the country, and this is all we look at. And I want to tell you that from our perspective, what we've seen, and we'll get to the first slide here, is that we have 3 opinions. The opinions are in the audit report. They're kind of buried, and that's what you pay us for, is to have an opinion. The opinions are based upon our independent verification or certification that the financial statements fairly present, that your compliance is in accordance with the government auditing standards, and that more specifically, that your compliance is with the single audit requirements for all the federal funds that you receive. And a little later on, I've got a note that you received $156 million in federal financial assistance. $140 million is from the HCV program. We're required to audit that for compliance, and we did. We have no findings, no material findings, no material noncompliance. Did you find problems? Absolutely. Every once in a while, we'll find something that needs to be corrected. So, but from the perspective of the audit opinion, it is material, immaterial items which resulted in a clean, unqualified opinion, which is really good. So it's the highest level. And I've got to say this because we've come through COVID, and what's happened in COVID is people wouldn't show up to work. And when people didn't show up to work, files got to be a mess. And so around the country, we normally have, I've had agencies that had 35 years of no findings. This last year, they received findings because of their files, because of COVID, because people weren't able to do the work or didn't do the work. You guys didn't. It was clean. It was clean this year. It was clean last year. And you guys are really be commended for the job that you're doing. In the audit report, I'm going to highlight some pages that if you want to go back and read later, great. This is like the elevator speech. What does the audit report include, and what are the things that I really need to know? Well, if I was a commissioner, I would want to look at pages 4 through 9, which is the management discussion and analysis. This gives you the summary of the executive summary of what happened during the year. It gives you a comparative of balance sheet and a comparative of income and expense. Very good reading. It should only take you 20, 30 minutes to read through it and look at the numbers. I would definitely look at that. The numbers on the financial statements are the same as the ones in the management discussion and analysis, so you don't have to worry about understanding CPA language and what the audit report is. So the statement of cash flow that's on page 12 of your report, to me, it's the most important page in the financial statements because it says how much cash do we have and how much cash increased. And last year, your cash increased by $1.2 million. And that's really good. The year before, I don't know if you remember this or not, but it was $5 million. It's because of COVID and some CARES money and whatnot. But you received some extra money in the prior year. But $1 million added to your cash position is really good and is really positive. Did the debt level increase? No, it did not. So your liquidity is better than it was. No findings. Page 49. If you're looking for a summary of the findings or the comments, there is none. We say on that page there's no findings. And that I can't reiterate enough how excellent that is and how good the staff has done at being able to maintain the files. I'll give you, for instance, we looked at over 400 tenant files. And in the 400 tenant files, in 300 of those files, we look at about 10 levels of noncompliance. That's a lot of areas that could go wrong. It could go wrong pretty quick. But we had no material noncompliance, no material errors. Did we have errors? Yes, we did. That's what auditors do. They find errors. And they don't like to talk about positive stuff, but you've done a really good job. And I appreciate the job staff has done. On page 55, you have the schedule of expenditures.
Really quickly.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate the presentation. If you could, just for, we have folks who are online, people in person as well, could you speak to some of just a few of the target areas that you did hit so that we can have a better understanding as to just how deep of a dive you did?
Yeah, for example, with the ACV program, it's probably the most risky program. It's the one where you have $140 million. We looked at compliance. The compliance supplement gives us a guideline of what we look at. And we look at both expenditures, but mainly we look at resident participant files. And those participant files have to be in compliance. That's one set of the scope. That particular test takes 2 staff people about a week to do. And it's a lot of files and a lot of review. So then we also looked at public housing. We looked at public housing files for compliance, and we looked at procurement. We looked at capital fund and the procurement as well. Now, each one of these compliance requirements has subsets of things you have to look at. So all in all, your federal financial assistance, $156 million. We looked at probably 95 to 98% of your federal assistance programs. Some of the minor programs we didn't look at for compliance, but we looked at in total as far as the financial statements. So we go beyond what we should go beyond and do. And really the reason we do this is because without the tenant files being maintained properly and compliance with those files, then you really have lost your mission. So we really believe it's important, and we don't just go to the minimum standard of 60 or 80 files. We looked at over 400 files. So it's quite intensive of compliance. With procurement, we'll look at 6 or 8 different things. With disbursements, we'll test for compliance with the Single Audit Act. For example, if expenditure is not supposed to be in a program, we'll check and make sure it should have been in a different program, or we'll make a note. But all the expenditures were properly supported and were in compliance. The expenditures we reviewed were good. So it is pretty detailed. The management discussion analysis has a comparative balance sheet 1 year to the next, because you need to understand there's things in here you're not going to be able to figure out. There's other things that are a little bit simpler. Let me illustrate the non-current liabilities. If you look at the non-current liabilities, it went up $14 million. What is that? That is your pension program. And the way the GASB, or Governmental Accounting Standards Board, mentions how to do that presentation, it's all based upon discount rates. So that can fluctuate $14 million in 1 year. Last year, it fluctuated $10 million the other way. So that kind of distorts your position. So what I tell board members to do is look at the current assets versus current liabilities. because that gives you liquidity. Because you have $43 million in current assets in 2022, and you have about $40 million in 2021. Your payables went up a little bit because of construction in process, some big projects you were doing during the RAD conversion, and so forth. The other number I want to point out to you that is of significance on this page is unrestricted net position. Because at the end of the day, you want to realize, what do I have that I have control of? Well, it's the unrestricted net position. So then the assets minus the liabilities would equal about $51 million in unrestricted resources. Now, when you see this balance sheet, you're not seeing the whole picture. And what we've done in the upper level financial statements is we've presented the discrete component units, and there's about $126 million of assets there. You don't own them, but one day you will. So that's why it's presented in your financial statements. And that's the trend that you guys are doing. I applaud you for diversifying the portfolio, the dreams that you have for development, the funds that you have, the programs that you have. That is the exact way to go. Diversify your portfolio, have more of these tax credits, have more of these RAD deals, and you're moving in the right direction. But that balance sheet here is only the governmental entities. The income statement is fairly consistent from one year to the next, with the exception of governmental grants and subsidies is up about $3 million. You had emergency housing money, you had Section 8, more Section 8 money, and you spent more in Section 8. Look at the housing assistance payments were about $6 million more than the previous year. Why? Did we house more people? The rents went up. Contract. In order to get affordable housing, the rents have to go up. You've got a serious lack of affordable housing, and you know that. And everything drives, we've got to get those houses rented out to Section 8 residents. And that's what they did last year, is they did more of an effort in that regard. Overall, it's a really strong financial income and expense statement. You had a $2 million increase in admin, but the year before you had a $2 million decrease. And we had transition of people, and we were going through COVID. So look at those numbers and analyze those numbers, but you can see how you went. These are the numbers we audited. They're fairly presented. They're accurate. They're right. I think we had very few adjustments. Significant items to note: no compliance findings over the last 2 years, reviewed over 400 tenant files, 3% error rate with certain compliance items. In other words, not 3% of all compliance, but if a tenant file had one compliance error, we'd count that. So we're testing 10 or 11 things, but only saw one error. Those occurred in less than 3% of the tenant files, which is a word to the wise. Let's get that down to 2 to 1 and so forth, because if it gets to be over 5, then it becomes a finding. So you've done really well. You need to continue to do well. A lot of the problems that we had were minor deficiencies that didn't need to be mentioned. The pension distorts the financial statements a little bit, and without digging into that numbers, you had $15 million increase from one year to the next in pension obligations. Your housing assistance payments increased $6.4 million. This is significant. You had $2.5 million added to cash totally from unrestricted sources. That's a good financial health and good strength. And you housed 16,000 last year. Needs to be 32 because you have that big of a need. But overall, job well done. Very few audit adjustments, and those were mainly because of cleanup with different transactions that don't affect cash or any of those items, and very good on the compliance side. So we are thrilled with what you've done and how you've done it, and frankly, from an independent person, excellent job, and you are in compliance.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions from members of the committee or online?
I have one.
Go ahead. Is that Commissioner?
Sir, if you're impressed with us, would you hire our person who's in finance? You're so impressed with it?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Well, I'm not allowed to hire anybody because of it's a conflict, but there are several people I'd want to hire.
Okay, but for example, even though you may not be able to hire, and that was never the issue. I mean, if you're saying all those good things, if you were in a position, he didn't call me to ask you to ask him for a job, but just like to know if you're impressed with him, would he be an individual that you would have to work for you because you've seen his growth and his development and his improvement?
Absolutely, without question.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, no question about it.
That's all I need to know.
I'm not allowed to go down that road, but yes, we would like to be hiring them.
All right, Fred, you got a job. Another job. But all seriousness, thank you for the work that you and your team put in. Obviously, thank you to our team here at SNRHA. And if there are no questions or concerns, I'll entertain a motion for approval. We have a motion from Commissioner Sagerbroom to approve, a second by Commissioner Bruni. Is there any comment at this time? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. The independent audit report is approved. We'll now move on to item number 10, approval of the resolution. Actually, it's been switched to number 12, and we'll now have approval of the public housing trespass policy.
Ava Mitchell-Cruz is going to present this item.
Good afternoon, honorable commissioners. So the trespass policy that I'm presenting today has been updated to include additional verbiage so that we can make it stronger. And I'd like to thank Commissioner Craig because she was also a part of this process. So basically now with the policy, we will be able to take pictures of the trespasser and post it on all of the bulletin boards, either in our properties and or in our administrative offices. Now, it won't be of a minor. So I just wanted to go over persons subject to trespass. So it's not just going to be anybody coming onto the property. So it's any person who has or is about to commit a criminal activity, including acts of violence, a person who has no lawful purpose on the property, and or a person causing a disturbance which interferes with the peaceful enjoyment of the community. Another change is that we used to have to be able to mail a notification to the trespasser, but we no longer have to do that. It could be a staff member, it could be the police, it could be a member of security who will verbally tell this individual that they are banned from all SNRHA properties. In addition, they will get a notice at that time indicating that we're private property and telling them that they are banned from all SNRHA properties. Now, there is an appeal process, so if that individual feels that they should be allowed to come on the property, there is an appeal process. And how that would work is that they would send in a written request, and a hearing officer would hear their concerns and make the determination. If the hearing officer decides that, yes, this person should be able to come back on the property, then any pictures of them and that whole process would have been terminated. So it would be like that they were never trespassed. Hi.
We have a few questions.
Okay.
Commissioner Turner.
Okay. With the trespassing, because we are trying to make sure that our communities are safe for everyone, so I understand that we have to take certain precautions. As far as if there is any problem that a certain resident may have with individuals, how would they report that to SNRHA? How would they, go about that? If I know I see someone that doesn't look like they really belong in the neighborhood, could or could not be, but maybe causing some trouble, or because I would expect that the residents would come together and be able to say, hey, this keeps going on. How would they present that to the authorities so that way it might not be a crime committed yet,
but it could be.
Yes, or how do we, because we don't want to single anybody out, but we want to make sure everyone is safe.
Right. And that's what occurred in one specific development where the residents were seeing individuals who really didn't belong there, and they notified the manager's office, and then she looked into it, and that one person had confronted a resident with a gun, and that person has since been trespassed and is no longer on the property. So, yes, you would go tell your manager. The manager would do what they needed to do to either investigate, notify Metro, notify PFI that this is a possible trespass person so that they're aware.
And one other thing, what if you're having conflict with those, maybe residents that are in there? Is there a way, a process that residents go about to handle any disputes that they may have?
With the trespass person?
Well, yeah, because it could be my kid, and they might be a resident.
Well, if it's a resident, we're not going to trespass them. We would really look into terminating the tenancy depending upon the severity of the actions of the resident. If it's your
child that comes to visit,
right, then we would help you. If you didn't want them to come on the property anymore, then we would help you be able to trespass them.
Thank you.
All right. This would also include, issues of vandalism, so forth. Before I go, I'll ask Commissioner Bruni to ask her questions, but I just had a few on top of mine.
I was just wondering, I'm sure we're not the first housing authority to adopt this program or policy, so is this sort of standard HUD language that we've adopted, and I assume our legal counsel, the esteemed Mr. Parker, has reviewed it?
Yes, I worked very closely with Jennifer Del Carmen, who is an associate in Mr. Parker's firm. We worked with this, we did research, and this is the end product. You're welcome.
All right. Just on the lines of Commissioner Turner's questioning, with policies like this, they can always be used in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wanting to know, have we contemplated the misuse of this policy, I guess directed towards the targeting of someone we may not like, a relative that stops by, or we may not like what they look like, or how do we ensure, that through the procedure it would take place to be able to prove or, disprove that, you didn't do or did do what's been accused, but what's contemplated in the policy that ensures that there is due process for the person? And if you can just walk us through what you've all have gone through as it relates to crafting the policy, that would be helpful.
Sure. So the appeal process is the last section on page 3, and basically it says that the person can ask for an appeal. So if you felt that you were trespassed and you shouldn't have been, we do give you a recourse that you can bring a representative, an attorney, whoever you may want, to sit down and help you tell your side of the story. What we did is we talked about being fair across the board to give people an opportunity to dispute this, because we didn't just want to say, okay, you're trespassed, that's the end of it. We wanted to give you a chance to tell your story and let us look at it. An independent person will look at it, and they'll make the decision. And I like the fact that if that person says, okay, housing authority, you were wrong, then that person, all their pictures will be down, and it'll be like they were never trespassed.
And Ava, can you reiterate again what gets you to the place where you're being, in the very beginning of your presentation, you listed some things that would have to occur in order for an individual to be considered a trespasser.
Yeah, so examples of persons who may be banned from our property: any person who has or is about to commit a criminal activity, including acts of vandalism; a person who has no lawful purpose on the property, and/or a person causing disturbance which interferes with the peaceful enjoyment of the community.
Okay, thank you. And I know this is something that's been discussed. I know at least for my residents over at Levy Gardens and a few other properties, they'll be very pleased to hear about this. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Turner?
Oh, one more. I just wanted to make sure that the residents understand it's not something weaponized against them or anybody that comes, because sometimes people may think we're making up policies to hurt them or go against them, but when they think of the whole picture of it, so as long as the understanding for the residents is this is to protect you and your property and your living space, as opposed to I'm trying to make sure that we don't have nobody that you have at your place get off our property.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah, I do understand, and I agree with that totally. Just so you know that the residents had 30-plus days to review this policy and to submit comments. And at Marble Manor, I went there, the president, Madeline Rhodes, asked me to come and go over the policy with residents that may have had questions.
All right, thank you. And this will be effective upon passage or effective after the approval of the minutes of the next meeting?
Yes,
Got
the
it.
approval of the minutes, yes.
The next meeting minutes, okay. Got it.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion for approval. We have a motion by Vice Chair Segerbloom.
I second it.
Commissioner Bruni, is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll take it to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is adopted. We'll now move on to item number 11, Public Housing Operations, approval of the Housing Opportunities through Modernization Act.
Dava will present this one as well.
Yeah. For everyone's knowledge, we had switched 10 and 12. So 12 went up to 10. 10 will now be 12, and then we're now on schedule with number 11.
So good afternoon again. So HOPMA is Housing Opportunities Through Modernization Act, and HUD made this law back in 2016. However, they are just finalizing many of the sections of this law. And one of the sections that I'm going to speak to is Section 103, which deals with over-income families. So what we have in front of us is residents are now given an opportunity for 24 consecutive months. If they become over income, then at that time, the Housing Authority had two choices. We could have terminated, or we could have kept the individual as a resident, but not identified as a public housing resident. What they would have to do after the 24 months is they would have signed a new lease. They would remain in the unit. However, their alternative rent would be either the fair market rent or the monthly subsidy that we receive from HUD, whichever is higher. So we chose to keep the families in the unit as opposed to terminating their tenancies. Now, during this 24-month period, you have a question? Okay. During the 24-month period, we will be having constant contact with the resident. So after each period, the initial determination, the 12-month and the 24-month, the individuals will be getting written notices 30 days. In addition to that, at every step of the way, the resident will have an opportunity to request the grievance hearing. Now, if at any point during this period, if the income falls below, then they would be able to start all over again. So let's say if on the 13th month, you're now not over income, you lost income, and now the whole 24 months will begin again.
that completes the presentation?
Well, yeah, you look like you had some questions, so I stopped.
I have questions,
Okay.
but more so concerns.
Okay.
And the concern, and it's not so much just policy as it relates to, just the crisis that we find ourselves in.
Mm-hmm.
We have people that, may need support. They may get a little bit better of a job, but the reality is they are still not making enough to meet the fair market value of what we are allowing, what the market rate is. So we're going to have a deeper discussion about this, especially as we talk about, multi-jurisdictional collaboration. But we have a whole swath of people who are in between. They don't qualify for public housing, and they don't qualify for market rate, and they're essentially the working poor, working homeless.
Right. Right.
Many relatives in my family, I know that they're in
Mine
that
too.
program. So I'm just trying to in that area. So you can proceed with the.
Okay. So this is for public housing residents, for residents who are already living with us. And if after the 24 months, if they remain over income, then we're not going to terminate their tenancy. They're going to stay, still live with us, but have a non-public housing rent. They would have a new lease. And the two choices, whether to terminate or to charge them the subsidy and or the fair market rent, that is a HUD mandate. That's what HUD is directing us to do.
Ava, can you give the commissioners in the audience a snapshot of the 2,149 units we have? How many people might be in this category as we speak?
So as of 2 weeks ago when we checked, there was a small number of approximately 10 within all of the properties. So at this time, we have 10. But at the end of the next 24 months, we may have 0 or we may have more, but they can still remain to live with us in their unit. Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
I was just thinking as we were talking about the in-betweens, and this is something I would like the director, and I think, he kind of understood one of my concerns was that to provide a better solution. And I thought about some of the rent-to-own programs that may be sponsored by HUD, and some of the things that, like incentives. Do you offer incentives for, residents that are in compliance? I might be a little bit over. Is there something upgrade? Can I get a newer unit if I am over? How can, we continue to promote their progress, their financial obligations and goals, and, kind of like, pat them on the back for doing such a better job. I know we have FSS, but only so many of those residents fit in that category as well.
So at the end of 24 months, if you're going to remain with us and sign our new lease, it also includes FSS families, okay? So if your question is, do we have, like, incentives? Can we say, oh, you know what, you live here, and we're going to move you here? Well, that's not part of the policy, but it's not something that we can't look into at a later time, and then I can come back and amend this.
But don't we do that already? Don't we have properties? Can you speak to that where we move? I'm almost certain we have things like that.
I mean, we do work with individuals and move them, but it's not specific to this program, right, to this policy. So if need be, we can have discussion and make an amendment and include it in this policy.
Thank you. I think we have Commissioner Churchio, and then that will wrap us up.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your report. Very informative. I believe I followed everything that you were saying, and I get it. But maybe I missed something. If someone continues for the 24 months and they go above that amount of money, okay, and we adjust it, according to market rate. What if sometime after that they lose their job and they're back to where they were before? What is the policy then? How do we deal with that person?
Okay, so unfortunately, at that point, that person is no longer considered a public housing resident. So if they were unable to pay the rent or something, then we would have to look at termination of tenancy at that point, because they're no longer public housing. They're out of our program.
So in other words, if they're making an effort to improve themselves, they could find themselves out of housing.
They could, but we can work with them, and maybe if another wait list is open, like a tax credit property and or a Section 8, if that's open, they may be eligible to go there and be on those wait lists.
So there's no policy to keep them, so to speak, in abeyance for a certain amount of time to make sure that their job or whatever, the income is pretty solid, that, they don't find themselves out of a job and then, of course, out of a place to live.
Right. Yes, at this time, no. During that 24 months, they lose their job. They still remain public housing. Right. It goes on the way it is. After that, if we do have other lists open, they can apply, but there wouldn't be anything for them to stay in public housing. And unfortunately, that's part of the HOTMA Law Act.
All right, thank you.
I think.
No, I think we're done. Okay. We're good. Thank you so much for the presentation. We'll now entertain a motion for approval. There's no further.
So move.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Segerblum.
Second
by Commissioner Churchill. Is there any discussion? Seeing and saying none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Anyone opposed? Motion is adopted. We'll now move on to item number 12. And that is the approval.
And Jessica
that
Walker.
Approval of the annual agency plan.
Jessica Walker will present this.
Got it.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am Jessica Walker, the Executive Coordinator of the Southern Nevada Regional Housing Authority. I am here to present our fiscal year 2024 agency annual plan. The plan was distributed for a 45-day public comment period, which started on Monday, May 8th. The plan was provided to the Commissioners, as well as letters and public notices were sent to our RAB members. Hard copies of the annual plan were distributed to all public housing offices in all administrative buildings. Public notices went into multiple local newspapers and publications during the month of June 2023. The public comment period closed with the public hearing that was held this past Monday, June 26th, in our chambers. The main changes were to our operations, which is public housing, and to our HCV program, which is the administrative plan. You all just heard from Ms. Ava Mitchell-Crew regarding HOTMA, which is one of the rules that we had to implement in our new agency plan. The second major item in the operations plan is regarding our maintenance plan. During inspections, a photo must be taken of the address prior to entry, and all deficiencies must be photographed and uploaded to Yardi, which is our property management software. After each unit turn and before each move-in, photos must also be taken and uploaded to Yardi. Photos must also be taken each time we enter a unit for work orders and inspections. If maintenance is repairing something, they must take a photo of that repair before. They must take a photo before and after the repair is complete. Each and every single time a maintenance staff member enters a unit, they must leave a door tag regardless of if the resident is present or not. Regarding our HCV administrative plan, temporary guardianship is one of the major things that were changed. SNRHA shall require participants who are requesting to add family members that are minors and who are not their children by birth, foster care, court-awarded custody, or court-awarded guardianship to provide proof of income for the care of the child, such as TANF payment or other support if any income is being received by an adult for the care of the child. School records, if the child is of school age, must be provided to document the subsidized residence as the record of enrollment for the children. SNRHA shall increase the voucher size for the addition of minors if the addition to the family warrants an increased voucher size based on SNRHA's occupancy guidelines. They have also listed forms that are accepted, which are court-ordered assignments, and verification from social service agencies. SNRHA shall not approve additions for any reason if it will result in overcrowding as defined in HUD regulations. We also made a change to the new family and household members policy. All changes in a family's composition must be approved by SNRHA and the landlord or property owner prior to the new individual moving into the unit. All changes in the family composition that are not requiring approval by SNRHA, which could be marriage or divorce or things of that nature, must be reported to SNRHA within 14 calendar days, or the next day the agency is open after the 14th calendar day. And if you have any questions regarding the actual plan itself or anything within the plan, all of the directors that participated in creating the plan are present, especially Ms. Alicia Jones, who is the director of our HCV program, and Ms. Ava Mitchell-Crew, who's the director of our public housing program.
All right, members, questions? Commissioner Bruni.
Thank you, Chair McCurdy. Jessica, to what extent were the new policies or changes based on guidance from HUD? Like, did HUD have a new policy around how to treat kids who are joining families who are not necessarily in foster care or guardians, et cetera?
So Ms. Alicia Jones can speak to that specific.
So actually, HUD requires us to retrieve documentation to support the finances that the family received for the child. However, we had a particular form that we required, which was not a HUD. It wasn't a form. It was an internal form that required the family to sign in order to add a family member, but we removed the form. So the purpose of this change is to remove that internal barrier that prevented families from adding their foster children or adding their adoptive children, not adoptive, but their family members when they to take custody. So it was one of those processes we put in place to remove a barrier. Okay. Any further questions?
Hearing seeing none, does that conclude the presentation?
That concludes my presentation.
All right. This is great. I like when we make it easier on us. Is there a motion for approval? We have a motion by Vice Chair Segerblum.
Second.
Oh, Commissioner Cox. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
You.
Commissioner Segerblum rescinds his motion. Commissioner Cox?
No, I was just seconding his motion.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Segerblum, a second by Commissioner Cox. Is there any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry. This is commissioners. This is Teddy Parker. I'm losing audio on Commissioner Craig. I don't know if anyone can hear him.
Oh, Commissioner Craig wasn't speaking. It was someone here in the audience. It was a question on the approval of the item, and it was stated that there had been a desire to comment on this item. However, that wasn't brought forward at the beginning. It was brought forward that it was a comment on the executive director's his report.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
So, yeah. So I'm just going to answer the question just so that we're clear. In the beginning of the meeting, I stated that when we open up the meeting, there will be a public comment period for items that are listed on the agenda. At that period, only you came forward and described that you would be interested in commenting on one item, and that was under item number 5, which was the executive director's report. Had there been, a desire to make comment on anything else, that would have been definitely permissible. But at this point, we have a motion and we have a second on the floor. The citizen participation period is over because that was at the beginning of the meeting during the public commenting period, as I stated. But if you would like to make comments at the end of the meeting, there will be another public commenting period. So that if there is something that you'd like to get on the record, you can do that as well. Okay. So we have a motion and second on the floor. There is no further discussions from members of the body. We'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted. We'll now move on to item 13, approval of Section 3 policy update. Welcome, Mr. Shaw.
Johnny Shaw again from procurement. The background on Section 3 program requires recipients of HUD funding to direct employment training, contracting opportunities to low-income individuals, and the businesses that employ these persons within the community. Section 3 is a provision of the HUD Act of 1968 and found in 12 U.S.C.170 LU. The regulations are found also in the 24 CFR Part 75 HUD regulations. HUD recently instituted the new rule, which I mentioned earlier, on July 1st, 2021. The new rule made several significant changes to the old rule. The new rule now counts labor hours versus new hires, which is a huge difference for the Section 3 recipients. The intent is to encourage contractors to retain Section 3 workers for a longer period of time after award of project has been completed. The new rule also created a targeted Section 3 worker, which is defined as an employee of a Section 3 business concern, a public housing residence, a Section 8 participant, or youth bill participant. The new rule created also new benchmarks for the Section 3 program. 25% total hours for the regular Section 3 worker, and 5% benchmark for total hours for a targeted Section 3 worker. The new rule was published in July 2021, but SNRHA has revised its Section 3 policy to include the new rule components. The Executive Director requests the board to review and approve the new Section 3 policy. Are there any questions?
Are any questions from members of the board, either in person or online?
Could you explain, what this means in reality?
Basically, the new rule, the old rule, we counted new hires, and that's what we reported to HUD. And so now HUD is requiring us to report labor hours versus number of new hires that a contractor hires for the project, and as well as the targeted benchmarks for the regular Section 3 worker and a targeted Section 3 worker. And so the old rule had no benchmarks, but the new rule now has benchmarks. If any housing authority does not meet the benchmarks, we have to show HUD that we made aggressive and appropriate means to get contractors to hire Section 3 workers. And as long as we can prove to HUD that we did our due diligence to encourage, and I say encourage because there's really no teeth in the regulation to penalize or to fine contractors for not hiring Section 3 workers. The law says to the greatest extent feasible, which is a very vague statement that HUD has in the regulation.
So just a quick question. Commissioner Segerblom. So I was just wondering, when we go through the procurement process and we are doing the scoring that goes towards and that goes against an application, is it included within the scoring that, you will score higher if you have stronger Section 3 language within, the confines of the contract?
That's a good question. And so through the RFP process, a request for a proposal, if a contractor is a business concern, a Section 3 business concern that Mr. Stafford mentioned earlier, which means that 51% of their company is owned and operated by Section 3 workers, or that 30% of their workforce are Section 3 workers, then they qualify as a Section 3 business concern, and they get additional points through the RFP evaluation scoring process. As well, if it's an IFB, which is an invitation for bid, then they would get, it's a scale, it's a running scale, they'll get additional dollars deducted from their overall bid for being a business concern.
Thank you. And I know there's at least one more question by Commissioner Turner, and we'll move on.
Yes, thank you. One of the concerns you mentioned, benchmarks, right? So the benchmark is that stating that our agency is responsible for at least 25% of those. Is that what explains that part to me?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to understand.
Okay.
And so basically 25% of the total labor hours that are worked need to be, and not just the agency, but these are the contractors.
The contractors.
Yes.
Okay. So presently, I don't know if you know, how many Section 3 workers do we have working?
Mm-hmm. And so I've reached out to the contractors to garner their data, and so at this time we have no targeted Section 3 workers, but we do have a multiple of regular Section 3 workers, and so I have about probably 10 firms that reported back of their total labor hours for regular Section 3 workers.
Okay. Well, I would like to see a report about that, in the future, especially with our training, if there's possible. Thank you.
Director Jordan.
I just wanted to add to the conversation. This is an age-old issue that housing authorities have all over the country. And I wanted to let the commissioners and the audience know that the housing authority, we're working on alternative measures to help people get work. The notion of having Section 3 based on contracts is a good thing. Oftentimes it's temporary. But for us, the bigger issue is that how do we help residents and participants find sustainable jobs? And we're doing that through the collaborations and partnerships we have with other organizations. We're doing it working with the Workforce Connection. If you all recall, when we opened up our wait list, for the first time ever, we asked questions. Who's looking for employment? Who's looking for training opportunities? So we'll continue to try and make this process better. But I think it's so important that we all understand that in addition to this effort, the Housing Authority is committed. Another thing that we're in the process, and Commissioner Desmond has been very helpful in this effort, is trying to create a pre-apprentice program. Create a program where we have residents who can work in various departments, particularly maintenance. We have people on our maintenance team now that are celebrating 30 years of employment that started off not in a Section 3 capacity, but in a capacity where we said we need people to come, learn skills, and have a long-term sustainable employment. So I just wanted to let you all know that those are things we're working on. Thank you.
I think we have one final comment from Commissioner Bruni.
Thank you. I think earlier you said that we didn't have the data for these reports because HUD hasn't been requiring us to submit the data, but is it your sense that with this new policy and now the explicit benchmark language that this is something they'll be tracking and obviously something that we'll be tracking?
Yes.
All right, thank you. If there's no further questions, we'll now move to a motion. There's a motion. We have a motion by Commissioner Bruni, a second by Vice Chair Segerblom. Is there any comment on the motion? Hearing saying no, we'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is adopted. Item number 14.
Approval to increase the Patterson Associates contract C22042 in the amount of $63,163.00. The background in December of 2022, contract 22042 for Patterson Associates was increased by $269,000. That was approved by the board. This particular increase was for the 4 software solutions that included DocuWare, AVIC, dashboard, hosting, and workflow automation platform services. These services are now being deployed on the SNRHA IT system and platforms. Patterson Associates will need to complete training and further implementation for the above-mentioned software for the agency through September 30 of 2023. The additional hours needed to cover the training is 325 hours in the amount of $63,163.00, which includes estimated travel expenses of $6,288.00. Action requested, the executive director is requesting the board to review and approve the increase to contract C22042 for Patterson Associates, LLC, for IT consulting services for SNRHA in the amount of $63,163.00, and the total contract value not to exceed $482,163.00. Questions? Up to.
So what it sounds like is we can draw up to the amount that's being requested.
Yes.
And we're increasing this to $63,163. That's what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any questions?
Will this conclude his services after he finishes training? Will this be like implemented or software?
It would be on an as-need basis, as we need his services to continue to implement and improve our IT solutions. And Mr. Patterson is on the phone if there are any questions for him as well.
So the $63,163, including this $6,288, is going to make sure that our employees are properly trained on the software and what we have going presently.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm sure this will include some cross-training with our new IT person that's coming.
Absolutely. And I think as we see our new IT director come on, we'll see less of Patterson's need, the presence for Mr. Patterson's need.
Thank you.
But also wanted to say that some of these costs, they aren't all direct payroll costs. They're costs for products and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Software.
Commissioner?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I entertain a motion.
Hello, Commissioner.
We have a motion by Commissioner Segerbloom. Vice Chair Segerbloom, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Churchio. Is there any discussion? Hearing seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
All right. And anyone opposed? Motion is adopted with one abstention.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 15. This is quite exciting, being that we're having our landlord symposium here soon. A little incentive always goes a long way.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Alicia Jones, Housing Programs Director. Today I come to you requesting approval to fund the Landlord Incentive Demonstration Program in the amount of $250,000 using non-federal developmental fee reserves. Some background. In an effort to expand current landlord partnerships and increase housing opportunities for participants, monetary incentives and reimbursements to landlords are an effective way to engage and attract landlords. The monetary incentive program will address delays in leasing and costs for repairs to units. In addition to the financial benefits, and these incentives and reimbursements, in addition to the financial benefits that these reimbursements and incentives offer, landlords recognize us as a symbol of support. They recognize as a symbol of support for some of the financial burdens that's posed by renting housing. The availability of these funds alleviates concerns for actual and perceived financial risk, regardless of whether the funds are paid out or not. The funds for the program will be used to offset or mitigate some of the expenses voucher holders incur and minimize any financial risk to the potential landlord. The fund will provide security deposit assistance, vacancy loss payments, damage claims, even sign-on bonuses for landlords that bring on new units that's never been participated in the program, in addition to adding units. While HUD has not provided funding for this type of program, we hope the success of the program will generate financial support from our other municipalities within our jurisdiction in the southern region. The request is, in the action request is, the executive director requests the board approve $250,000 from the non-federal developmental fee reserve to fund the first landlord incentive program for the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
I'm sorry. This $250,000. Why we choose that number? I'm just interested.
So,
well, we chose it from the perspective of hoping that we can build a greater number, and also showing this is what we're willing to put up. You know, over time, we're hoping that we can get matches from the other jurisdictions. When we look at the size of our program, case in point, we have over 200 landlords who are coming this afternoon. People are very interested, and we wanted to also prevent ourselves from coming back to you. Well, here's 30,000. Then let's put out a number that we think will take us a while, and see how we go with that.
I heard how you put the emphasis on the jurisdiction. So we were talking about that later.
I think that means the two cities.
Yeah, we hear you.
Thanks, Commissioner Browning.
There no further.
I did want to make a comment.
And we got Commissioner Craig after the Vice Chair.
I just want to say I think this is great. I think we have around 500 vouchers that we need to get out there so we can go to D.C. with clean hands and start begging for what we really need, which is another up to Chicago. So I really support this idea.
And if I may, Commissioner, just to reiterate what Commissioner Sagerblom is saying, you know, we've talked a lot about us being under allocated vouchers. One of the things that's so important is that, as he said, as we go to D.C. and we continue to ask for more, the number one question we're going to be asked is, what are you doing with what you have? And in order for us to be more successful in managing what we have to have a stronger relationship with the landlord community. I can't give a hard number, but it's my understanding that there is a significant amount of units here in the valley that are empty. And I'll just be very candid. As a entity, the voucher program and its reputation, particularly here in Southern Nevada as in other places, we need to continue to build on that. And this is an opportunity for us to do it so that, you know, the 500 the commissioner's talking about, that's approximately how many people that are out looking right now. And so our utilization rate is right around 96% of the vouchers we use. We need to hover around 99 and 100% consistently for HUD to say, okay, you guys really need more vouchers, and that's what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner, I know we got Commissioner Craig, and then we're going to go to Commissioner Cox, and then we're going to
Thank you. I just want to say, Director Jordan, I think you're doing a great job. I'm very happy and very pleased with that. I hope that we do such a good job that eventually, once you all prove that you've done what's necessary, that we can put more money and stimulate, you know, the landlords and let them know that it is workable. We can get things done. So I really, really love that. Thank you.
I was going to say almost the same thing. I appreciate Commissioner Jordan and our staff, or the staff that are working hard to get things done. I did have a question, and I'm sure that that Director Jordan will know the answer. Why do you think that we do have units sitting empty? Is it just the sheer demand of what that takes to get people in place, or what can be done to possibly be using those vouchers that are not being used, or the units that are not being used?
I think building on a business partnership for those of you who are going to have an opportunity to come back this afternoon, we're going to talk about the business case for doing this. We're going to talk about streamlined processes. We're going to talk about stronger customer service efforts, you know, not just the housing authority, but just government in general. You know, people tend to say there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. There's an unfortunate stigma that comes with who we rent to, and or who's in our programs, and we know darn well through experience and through data, we just have good people who just need help. And I've been in meetings where I'll say, raise your hand if you have a bad Section 8 story, and hands will go up. And then I'll say, well, how about a good Section 8 story? And just as many, if not more, hands will go up. We have to work collectively. You know, we talk a lot about customer service. We have to show that landlord partnership, how significant they are. When every now and then, if something goes wrong, we're there to address it. The streamlining and payment and things of that nature. So that and the competing interests of vacation rentals and things of that nature, you know, where people will say, I can rent my unit over the weekend of the race and get X amount of dollars, versus not understanding renting to us and people in our program. You may be renting to a person who can now show up to work every single day and contribute to our local economy, versus a person who has to drive 40 miles coming into work. Those are the business conversations that in the voucher or in the world of the voucher, we're starting to have more collective conversations. There'll be someone from HUD to do a presentation today to also talk about the business case. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Breen.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I know that other jurisdictions have adopted. Similar programs. So, you know, how confident are you that the program that we're hoping to implement here has sort of drawn on best practices and things that have worked well in other jurisdictions, so that we're not, you know, maybe including something that hasn't worked so well? That's my first question.
Okay. So actually, HUD has did an analysis, per se, and provided a lot of information as far as the program is concerned, as far as incentivizing landlords. And a lot of the ideas come from HUD. This originated from HUD to increase landlord participation in incentivizing owners. It goes back several years, actually. It's just the first time it's actually really, really working. So multiple jurisdictions nationwide have implemented this strategy as a direct result of the lack of affordable housing and our crisis that we're experiencing nationwide, which is our homeless crisis. So this is something that is actually proven through HUD's research that it's an effective program.
And Commissioner, I wanted to add to that, here locally, the county has a very robust incentive program dealing with landlords who will house hard-to-house homeless individuals. Mm-hmm. And we participate in that. We give incentives. And so what we're looking at in working with the jurisdictions, we're saying this is working with a landlord that doesn't get a guarantee via a voucher program, but the strength of the rapid rehousing, there's a number of different programs. What we're saying, if it's working for folks who are homeless, who oftentimes may have more obstacles, just imagine how well it could work for family individuals that are working, and a guarantee from the housing authority that the third or fourth of the month, your monies will be in the bank. And in the event that participant loses their income, we make up the difference. And so there's a number of reasons why this should be go well. And as I may have mentioned to you earlier, this is something that timing was very important on. We could have held off and said, let's see if we can meet with the different jurisdictions around budget time. But we're at critical mass right now, and we think this will be a good investment in our community and a good incentive for our landlords to help address some of the issues we're having.
My second comment is I'm happy to go back to our city and ask for a match, but I would really like to see a more formal working group across this jurisdiction so that we're meeting quarterly, maybe even set up like a database, right, so that we're not all sort of talking to different landlords. So, you know, with that confirmation, I will happily make that ask.
Thank you. I like that.
All right. Great comment, Commissioner Bruni, for sure. We have Commissioner Turner.
Yes, and you were mentioning the HUD regulations. I spoke earlier as to rent-to-own program and other incentives even for residents to, you know, dig in a little bit deeper in their communities and do what it takes. One of the other things I wasn't sure of is I remember Habitat for Humanity. And a lot of times when people build their house, they be careful how they treat their house and what's going on in their house. So I didn't know if there's something also that, you know, collaborations with other, you know, partners in the community, Home Depot, whoever supplies everything, go and fix the house you just broke. So, you know, that's how I feel. So I just wanted to see if there was other things we can continue to add to make it more robust and definitely, you know, win over some of those landlords that are willing to help us.
You know, I don't feel we properly answered your question earlier when you were talking about other incentive programs. Jessica, what's the one property that we work on? We move people. It's a graduated process we have.
Auto.
Okay, auto. So, and we can follow it with you, but commissioners, we do have a program where as people progress in day-to-day activity, paying bills, you know, maintaining units, there's a step up, if I can use such a term, with our property at auto. Yes, if you may. Chair, do we have time to? Go ahead, Jessica.
So there is a flyer that is placed at various properties. We have Auto Merida, who's one of our properties, which is a transfer opportunity. There are requirements such as you have to be in public housing for a minimum of 12 months, have had 0 lease violations, as well as no late payment of rent or other charges, and no housekeeping issues or failed inspections. And there are income limits. I can send that out to all of you all if you're interested in looking at that.
Yes, and just to make sure that residents that are, you know, I know you guys take a look at that usually, who is in compliance and things, make sure that those residents are, you know, really receiving enough of that information so they can make wise choices as they progress in their work efforts and, you know, their financial situations improve, that they can, you know, feel a sense of security so they can, you know, improve their lives. That's really, and I can just speak to that as being a resident, when you have those opportunities and you maximize on them, you feel so much better when you know that you have basically earned what you worked for and you feel good about that, and it shows. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Bruni. We have a second by Commissioner Churchio. Is there any more discussion on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is adopted. We'll now move on to item number 6. Is there anyone who has any new business that they want to bring to the board? Commissioner Bruni?
Thank you. I don't know if it's new business, but I know we're doing a board training shortly, and so I wanted to ask for 2 data points or topics to be covered or included. One is the resident board. I've heard throughout the course of the meetings just lots of things about the resident advisory boards, and so understanding their structure, requirements, et cetera. And then in the audit, I noticed that you had a breakdown of revenue and expenses, and I would love to know what we've been expending on tenant services and maintenance over time, and then how those compare to other jurisdictions our size, because, you know, it seems like tenant services are really low, but I don't know if there's a HUD requirement that we can't spend more than 10% of our budget or whatever it is, 1% on tenant expenses. So I'd love to have a conversation around the expenditures and any constraints that HUD may have on those. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Churchill? Yes, something.
Thank you.
I have, excuse me.
First, just let me mention something first. My colleague, Commissioner Brune, thank you very much for bringing up that issue of wanting to discuss with your jurisdiction to partner with what we're doing over here. Would you mind if I take your lead and have Chief of Staff give you a call or your staff person? Because I think North Las Vegas should do our part too. What I did want to mention, and I mentioned it before very briefly, when I'm kind of the new boy on the block over here with the commission, and it's a real privilege to be here. It really is. But I noticed when I first got here, and I think I mentioned it to Executive Director Jordan. Let me just say this, the jurisdictions, of course, we all know we never make mistakes in our jurisdictions. We do everything, exactly right, which isn't true. But what I'm noticing over here is, and I think today was another example, when someone wants to speak at our meetings, they're required to fill in a blue card first. We have a blue card. It could be a purple card. Where people put their name on there and they sign it, and they identify if they want to speak at the first open forum, agenda item, or at the last in general open forum. And they check off the item. Right now, I believe you had mentioned to me that someone keeps a record of who speaks here, takes their name, but in reality, I find it very confusing. And I haven't spoken to my colleagues on this, but I think it would be much more organized and place the responsibility on the people who may walk in the middle of the meeting and want to get up on an item that's just coming up next, be required to fill in that card and put their name on it so we have a tangible record that they did speak and what they spoke on. So down the road, if they say, no, I didn't speak or I spoke on something else, well, we have that card, and we could address those issues. Even after the meeting, we could always get back because we have a record of what they wanted to speak to or what they did speak to. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and we could send over the cards. Commissioner Turner?
Yes. I had spoken to the director, and I just wanted to make sure it was clear that some of the issues that we were facing with maintenance and everything and, hearing about some of the living conditions, that we address it through the proper extermination, doing anything to increase the frequency, and maybe if there is a way through HUD that we even have to do more inspections to make sure the property is the way it should be, and increase their level of accountability as a resident. And our accountability is to making sure their homes are in the working order where they can have a safe dwelling and to raise their children. So I just kind of wanted to have you review those records and see if, how that would affect us if we had to do it more or frequently, just to make sure that we're doing our due diligence by our,
Duly noted.
Thank you.
All right. We'll now move. That concludes our new business items, if they're noted. We'll now move to the second period of public comment. Please come forward at this time. And it looks like we have Ms. Rhodes.
Madeline Rhodes, 914 West McWilliams Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada, resident council president over there in the community. Again, I will go forward and say my apologies for the improper standings and coming to my comment, and I appreciate for now having this moment. And with that being said, yes, ma'am, I appreciate you for acknowledging the concerns that have already been vocalized, but I would also like to acknowledge the what is being done, and it needs to be acknowledged because there needs to be accountability of leadership and of accountability of positions and of jobs. And so if you have this job, then you should know your position and how it operates. And if not, then there should be training, proper training. With that being said, I've been the resident council president since 2019, in which it is that we would have our pre-board meetings, and what would come before these meetings would come on Thursdays. And so what would happen is then we come and we meet, we talk about issues that are transpiring. We were told that that is the composition of the RAD board, but that is the improper composition of the RAD board. and it is not limited to just the vice presidents and the presidents, as it has been strictly tried to be imposed upon the residents in the community who have vocalized they would like to participate and be part of that component. The last time that bylaws were signed were in 2017, and I have been the president since 2019. It is not in compliance, so how it passes compliance, I don't know if this is something that goes within the audit, but that should be included inside of the audit because that's how we have effective communication with the commissioners and with the residents and with housing to make sure that there are fair and equitable services rendered to the residents. A lot of residents do not speak up because they are fearful for them in their housing, their homes, and retaliation. But in CFR 100.400 states, and it protects us, that we are protected against retaliation from staff from reporting things that are happening to us. But these things continue to impede and do happen to us on a regular basis. As well as when it comes to the RAB board, we need to have that because that is part of the annual planning. If you guys approve annual planning without the proper people, which are the RAD board, then that null and voids your annual planning because you must, by regulation, state it.
They cut you off, don't they?
I'm right here. Stated, and it says, Resident Advisory Board provides the Public Housing Authority and the residents with a forum of sharing information about the agency's annual planning. Section 511 of the United States Housing Act and Regulations in CFR 24, Part 903 requires that the Public Housing Authority establish one or more resident advisory boards as part of the public housing plan process. Resident Advisory Board membership is comprised of individuals who reflect the So what I'm going to ask is that you have 3 minutes. Everyone has 3 minutes. That's noted on the agenda. Now, what can happen at this point is if you want to hang back, you can speak to Director Jordan or someone who is here. So if you want to submit something in writing, but at this point, the 3 minutes is up. Everyone gets 3 minutes. That's how it goes. It's not particularly just for you. So.
Ms. Rose, your time is up, so we're going to ask that you step back. Call to order. Is security here? Are we going to?
So if somebody wants to come forward next. So, as noted on the agenda, everyone gets 3 minutes. And while you may have other information that you want to bring forward, all I ask is that you come forward at the end of the meeting and you bring your concerns. We have legal counsel here. We have our executive director here. So there is an opportunity for you to still have your voice heard just at the conclusion of the meeting after your 3 minutes that you put on the record.
Hi, my name is Shaboya Lacey. I'm a resident. I used to be a resident of Simmons Manor. I have concerns and comments regarding the neglect of rules and regulations, CFR policies, and evictions. I was legally evicted when me and my son suffered from disabilities. They know this. They said I owed rent. I submitted that I didn't owe rent, which Ms. Evans still said on the eviction, didn't overturn it after I submitted all documentation during the time being evicted and losing my job that I took 8 years for me to get certification to do. And they told me, which Amber told me, to go ahead and accept what happened and move along after showing that my civil rights was violated and CFR codes were violated, that they did not produce the proper information showing how they stood on this eviction after I showed them that I was in right standing. The documentation that they sent on this eviction, it had no date on the eviction. So how can you evict me with paperwork that was proceeded through the court that has no date to show when I was in violation to be evicted on? When I showed you guys that I wasn't. Over $8. They turned $8 into $1,800, and then I asked them how did they occur that. They said they let it build up in fees over a year. But then in the eviction, it stated that I was delinquent for 3 years from the date I moved in to the date that they evicted me, which was incorrect, because if that was the case, how was I able to stay for 3 years and have receipts for paying rent, but I was delinquent? And you still stood on it, Miss Mitchell. Amber still stood on it. And then when I had my last hearing after being evicted, these hearings weren't given before. They did not give me the opportunity to address before. And when they did, they failed to show up to these meetings and showed and said that I did. And when I have 4 different witnesses that came with me, I have written statements, I have recorded hearings with these people, and they still put me out and did not overturn my eviction. And I'm still homeless, living from house to house, fighting this eviction that they told me to just accept and get over it. And that came from Amber. My last meeting with them was just probably 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, and they told me that she wasn't going to overturn it, that she'll give me the opportunity to question those that processed the eviction. When I got there, I was ambushed. One of the people that she said would be there was there. Everybody else was not supposed to be there. The property manager had the convenience of sitting in her office right over the wall and have the meeting from her office on the phone. And then when I got through to go to my apartment, my unit, which they told me I had to evacuate, get everything out that day, which I told them was they couldn't do. I went around there and I had the police called on me because that property manager said that I ambushed her and I came and barricaded her in the office when I have a documentation from Metro and the security that responded that she called. It was a lie. So that's retaliation, defamation of character, so on and so forth.
Beatrice Turner. You know, I have not been at y'all meetings in a long time, but I come for this reason because of that lady there. Anytime this lady get put for $8, she get evicted, and she got a disabled child. Come on now. Y'all got to do better than y'all been doing. And, you know, I want to say to you, you transplant that they done brought in here, you know, just like I look at that commercial on TV talking about getting rid of that man at the school district, whoa, whatever his name.
We're going to ask that your comments be respectful.
Who said that? You? Oh, call security. As the chair, y'all need to do something about that eviction. Because that shouldn't have never happened. For $8, come on now. You're going to evict somebody for $8 and people are homeless, can't find places to stay, and she had been paying her rent and whatever. You know, y'all need to do something about that. But I tell you what, you can take your time on it or whatever you want to do. But I tell you what, all of y'all, most of y'all got elections coming up. And I'll be at your next city council meeting and your next county commissioner meeting. And I'm going to be bringing the same issue up about that woman and her disabled child been put on the street. And y'all sit up here on this board and y'all allow this to happen and y'all don't do nothing about it. I'll see y'all in y'all field.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Is there anyone else?
Phyllis Carpenter, 5200 Alpine. Thanks, guys, for having me. I would just like to say there needs to be accountability of these people. Mr. Jordan, you guys told us when you hired him, we wasn't able to be at that round table when you guys did the hiring process. He was ran out of California. He didn't come from Chicago. There was a petition to remove him from California, and he came directly here. It says that he didn't follow court orders with the MOUs. Have you seen the article or the petition? I'm just asking because there needs to be accountability. Okay, so my apartment, this whole 3 years I've been there, something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. They made me out like I'm crazy, but now there is an underground leak in it, and it's uninhabitable, they told me, and I have to move because it's been uninhabitable. I can't even go in my apartment right now to get anything because it's unsafe, but you let me live there for 3 years. Section 3, go to the HUD exchange. There is training for Section 3. A RAD property has to be at least, I believe it was a third of the workers have to be Section 3. Let me breathe. I asked for the bylaws for SNRHA, SNVRHA, and also for the Affordable Housing Program, Inc. Jessica, when I came to pick them up, I asked them to be mailed. I had to come pick them up. Jessica only gave me SNRHA, so I asked where the other ones was. She said, so they came out with the second amended, whatever, for a affordable housing program. But it's funny because SNRHA didn't form until 2010, but in their bylaws, they're dated 2005, and it says that the SNRHA board is the board over the Affordable Housing Program Inc., but they're dated 2003, 2005, and 2009. If you guys wasn't even formed then, how is that? Okay, yeah, I just want to know why he's even here if he was ran out of California. I mean, the whole hiring process, it just floors me. And accountability of the public housing top employees something needs to be done, because it's asinine the stuff they're doing to us. And I know that they made me out to be crazy, and I may be a little bit crazy, but I know when something's wrong in my apartment, and now they want me to move. They try to give me Ada Brent, which it reminds me of don't get me wrong, and I'm grateful to have housing, but it's supposed to be safe, healthy, and it's not. And then in 2021, they came and they replaced the floor. They knew then that there was a leak underneath the concrete, and instead they chose to leave me there. How is that safe and healthy? And I just don't get it. And Miss Lacey.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time? And again, I invite anyone who did not get to complete their comments to please stay back so that you can at least get to address some of the issues that you have.
I'm Rick Rosen, President of the Resident Council for Rule on Earl Mobile Home Park, which is probably the most unique property in the SNRHA from what I can discern. We have two phases. The front phase one is owners of the mobile homes. Phase two in the back is all prefab, and there's a commingling, which is certainly predated Mr. Jordan and the staff, but it is going to, I'd like it very much to be a non-adversarial type of relationship that we have. We're willing to work with whomever, but we have owners that invested under certain conditions, and now not only have the goalposts been changed, but the entire game that we're playing. I mean, we went from playing hide and go seek to now we're playing pro football, and it's a very serious thing for those of us who invested in property as owners. And now to go to we're going to commingle the two sections to have renters, which when you're an owner and you have renters next door, you have different values, and it does adversely affect the property values there. So very open to mediation, very open to working with the board, Mr. Jordan and his staff. But we do, the one thing that's always noticeable that I get from the residents that I speak to is that it's almost always an adversarial relationship with the staff. And that's just uncalled for. It's going to lead to litigation, which can certainly be avoided. Not that I have anything against attorneys, and I don't believe you're Theodore Parker III, but there's just no need to go that way. We can certainly have mediation and come to an agreement where everybody's accommodated, and that's all I'd like to do, and leave that open to somebody to go forward with that and contact me. I know my information is available, and I think we can do it in an alliance that's going to work well for all of us, and that's all I have to say. And I do thank you, and I thank Mr. Jordan for his cooperation. He's been a breath of fresh air as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Hello and welcome.
Not here to complain today. Wedding Patton, Jamestown Towers. I'm going to give compliments today to Ava, Jordan, Amber. The weekend that we had the Pearson Center incident, Jamestown Towers, we have people in electric chairs, walkers, The door Fridays, the office is closed. Nobody works on Friday. The office was closed. Well, the doors didn't open. You push it. You'd have to go and push the door. Well, these people with these wheelchairs, they're not able to go push the door and then try to get out of the wheelchair. Well, I ran into Ava over at the Pearson Center, and I complained. Well, y'all know I'm a complainer anyway. I complained to her. She was the first one I saw. I saw Jordan next. I complained to him. I saw Amber last. I complained to him. But I must give them credit. They did get the door fixed. But unfortunately, now it's staying open too long. Now, where we live, we have a lot of homeless there. So they need to just come out, readjust it to let it close in maybe a minute and a half. I suggest to Patricia that we get a sliding door because we're under RAD. They're doing renovation now. But I would like to thank them for their quick, reaction to getting that door fixed. I can push the door. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to come forward at this time? All right, hands here. No one else. This meeting is adjourned.